Well, yeah, wow, that was bad. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Stage the Case.
Jeez, Owen.
I had to say one word, hello.
I know,
that didn't even
I-
work. Wow, it's going to be a day.
Are we starting over, or are we just going to keep going?
Yeah, let's just
I think
keep
you have to
going.
keep this. They have to know the
They need
truth.
to know.
They need
the
to know.
world
The peop-
must know
The
my
people
shame.
deserve to know.
So as always, you have myself, and since they're not going to introduce themselves, Jesse
Not
and
after
Tony.
that. It's not
Hey.
after that nonsense. I cracked open a beer already, so let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, in spirit of it being after Thanksgiving, I'm drinking a beer called Oh Santa, I Know Him.
Okay.
Is it good?
I don't know, and I'm pretty sure it's at least a year old.
I do not like Christmas beers. They're too dark, and they always like try and make it like some kind of festive thing. I'm like, weird
This-
flavors.
Taste it. Taste it right now and tell us what you think.
It's weird, all right.
I wanted you to be like terrible and then smash it behind your back.
Awful. It's weird, but it's not bad. It's a lot of flavors I wasn't expecting. Anyway,
Well, this week we're going to be talking about a very relevant topic to both theater and video games, which is the importance of making sure your audience is happy, which is both a good thing and a very bad thing. I guess we'll start with video games, just because there's a very relevant story that happened this past week. Well, a week ago at this point.
a while now. Yeah.
Um,
It's been brewing for a while.
Yes.
Oh,
What happened with EA and their microtransactions, their PR debacle, to put it lightly.
The most downvoted comment in Reddit history was them trying to defend themselves.
Yeah.
So
So they tried to make microtransactions that affected gameplay into the game, and their PR was so bad they ended up having to remove all microtransactions from the game entirely. This isn't permanently; it's temporarily until they fix them. But in the meantime, sales from the game have not been good.
Ooh.
And I
There's so much-
personally I'm not going to buy it.
yeah,
I don't
I'm not
care.
going to buy it until they
which
get
is
rid of it
terrible because
entirely.
I've heard great things about the campaign mode, which I really wanted to play when I first saw the trailer for it. But I'm not going to give EA my money.
Yeah, and that's basically it. Is people don't want to give EA their money because they said they tried to sneak it past us. It's the same reason everyone's really mad that the healthcare vote happened at 1 a.m. or and things like that. All these things that are going to be bad for those affected by it are trying to get sneaked past. So people don't want to get screwed over. So EA is really like on fire. I'm positive there's so much panic going on at EA.
So
So
this
much-
is why it's important to please your audience.
Please your audience,
Yes.
exactly.
and it's a good.
There's
I think this is like a big deal for like gamers, because it shows that like, okay, you messed with
They're-
people, they're gonna fight back, and it shows that their voice was actually heard, because things were so bad that they ended up having to pull the microtransactions.
at least until people
At
forget
least-
about it and they'll put it back.
But
Which is why a lot of people are refusing to buy the game.
yeah, because they're gonna
There's-
come back in.
There's also a petition that for Disney and I guess the remnants of LucasArts, anyway, for Disney to pull all Star Wars games from EA entirely, to completely take away Star Wars from EA. And
It got so bad that Bob Iger had to call the head of EA and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?
what did
This
you
is
do?
this is affecting our stock."
Yep. And I'm wouldn't be super surprised if it. Well, I would be kind of surprised, but it wouldn't shock me if the Last Jedi sales are affected by it.
I already have
Because
my
people.
ticket, so.
Oh my god, I'm so gonna see that. There's
Me
no
too.
way.
And there's,
You can't stop that train.
that's another thing of knowing your audience though.
Mhm.
For the Last Jedi, we didn't get a trailer until like 2 weeks ago, and this is obviously it's film. It's a little different than theater, but it's basically, I've said it before, is that Disney's marketing campaign for The Last Jedi is pretty much fuck it, you'll see it anyway. No matter.
It is
And
true.
I will. They're
It's
so
true,
right.
but that's such a hard thing to do, and that's a bold strategy. is, you know what? Here, have a little teaser about
And
maybe.
you can't do that all the time. Only when you literally own Star Wars.
So it's basically only Star Wars, but not even, because EA proved it. If you're bad to your audience, they're gonna say, you know what, I was really excited for this. Like Owen and I were really excited for Battlefront 2, and then we were really excited for it. We heard they were deciding to fuck over the gamers, and we said, nope, not about it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting distinction to be noted as well about like the difference between pleasing your audience through customer service and like treating them right through like care and not charging them for like in-game features, and also like how you please your audience in terms of content. Like, what kinds of games are you putting out? Are you putting out the stuff we want? Are you trying something new? Are you doing something that's shit but you think we'll buy it because it's got a great name?
That's what
Call
EA
of Duty.
does.
Yeah, exactly.
EA owns all like the sports titles, and that's what they do. They change one thing like about every year, and they get so much money from it. It's like they don't do vast improvements to it. It's still pretty much the exact same game with maybe different people in it. Maybe one thing is different, but they make so much money off that, especially their sports games. Their microtransactions for sports games is like astronomical, so that people can make like their super fantasy teams.
I honestly can't imagine the appeal of sports games at all, let alone paying for features in your sports games.
I can understand the appeal. I'm just really bad at them, so I don't play them. I'm terrible
as a kid, I'd get them when my team was good. So when the Packers were good, I'd get the game when they're in the. But then I was like, wait, this is the same game I'm paying over and over for. And also, I just threw Hail Marys the entire time. I had no strategy.
Yeah.
I just threw it deep down the field every single time and go for the best. I would never actually punt. I would do a fake punt every time. Just nothing to do with the game. So
that sounds more fun
I
than playing
know people who
correctly.
religiously buy the new Madden. I know people who religiously buy the new FIFA because it has something. It's like it's such a big sports title, and that's what EA does. And I hate that EA just bought Respawn Entertainment, the guys who made Titanfall, because it means that I'm not going to buy Titanfall anymore if they come up with a third one, because Titanfall 2, that was one of my favorite campaigns that I've played in a long time. That was great story mode, great multiplayer mode, and now I'm just not going to buy it. And especially Battlefield 1 is great too. I'm not going to buy Battlefield anymore, which means I have to go back to Call of Duty, which I'm not thrilled about.
But even that, that's a the audience. Call of Duty went back to World War II because people were sick of the futuristic shit.
Yeah, but it took long enough. It took them way too long to get that hint.
To get that hint, it was like, hey, we don't care if we have this big futuristic gun. We'll go play Halo if we want a futuristic gun. We want something that had actually happened. So they haven't done a Civil War. That'd be fun. Call of Duty Civil War.
Let's talk about that at least.
And that would be relevant right now.
Let's talk about
unfortunately
a different side of pleasing the audience in terms of video games, and why sometimes people will say like it's about the audience, like the audience is always right.
No, they're not.
Especially with gamers. Gamers are a very particular bunch and will get pissed off about a lot of things very easily. I support all the people who got pissed off for microtransaction. That is very justified.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of people who get their panties in a bunch for a lot less, and will
a lot of terrible
say
things.
A lot of terrible things.
Terrible things for women too. Women who try to make video games. They don't get treated very well by the public.
People were people got really up in arms. Battlefield 1, going back to EA, they put one of their new expansions for the game, this Russian model. I put female soldiers in the game, and people were like, there were no female soldiers in World War I. What the fuck are you doing? This is just pandering to some feminazi bullshit. I'm quoting. Please don't get mad.
Oh my god! Oh, of course. We've been friends 11 years.
We know better, but don't take him out of context.
Actually, if you look at the research, there were female Russian soldiers, so...
Also, what if girls want to play as soldiers? What if we want to see ourselves in those roles? Why is it so bad?
Jesse?
God forbid a woman soldier.
Sorry, you froze
hard.
Sorry,
can you hear my rant? I'm just ranting.
Your rant froze for a second.
Your rant froze for a second. Yeah, that's fine.
The Skype is like, okay, that's enough. Chill out. But I think as we were talking about Hamilton last week or 3 weeks ago or any time in between, because I don't remember, but like just because something was that way doesn't mean like it needs to be that way, especially like in a fantasy escapism sort of setting.
That's for a video game setting.
Mm-hmm.
But people get up in arms for a great example was anything colorblind. Just people like well, you can go back to Hamilton because everything can. It's like those people weren't black. But
That's
so
not the point of it.
That's not the point.
To let people see themselves in the world, because that's how we know.
Have Hamilton
it's so rare nowadays to find like playing like a black, like God forbid playing as a female of color as a main character in a game. That's gonna be almost impossible to find.
Right, and when do those people get to see themselves in the game, in the world, in
but
art?
playing as a person of color who's not like depicted as like a gangster or some kind of stereotype like that, it's gonna be hard in video games.
Yep.
And that sucks.
It does.
And lots of people don't want that. And that's the difference between being like, you don't want to piss off your customers because they buy your product. But there comes a point where like, I would love it if some companies stood up for what's right and for inclusivity, even if it did lose them some money. And I guess it's just, it's one of those things. You make your choices.
Well, since we've mentioned Hamilton, we might as well swing the conversation over to theater.
Look back to theater, yeah. And that's a much harder thing because it's
much more complicated.
Theater gets to play the, you know what, you need to see this, as opposed to I know my audience and they really should see this, as opposed to I know my audience and they'll come see this. I've had this conversation a lot with a lot of different people, actors, management, all sorts of people. You can have the most well-produced or the most beautiful piece of theater in the world, but if no one comes and sees it, what's the point?
Exactly.
And that's
it's a big
hard.
thing. Yeah, it's absolutely hard.
And from an actor's standpoint, it's the actors got to see it. The actors got to be a part of it. And this was really where my switch from actor to administrator started was, so if it's just for the actors, that's just kind of masturbatory. That's nothing. And that's my point. That's my whole thing is if it's for the actors, okay, good for them, but that's such a small scale. Even if it's a 40-person ensemble, that's 40 people as opposed to the possible hundreds and thousands who can come see it.
And also that's not sustainable. You can't make any money paying actors to scream into a void where no one can hear them. Actors live to be seen. And stories live to be shared. And it's always that challenge of, do I want to sell tickets or do I find a way to force people to see something that they maybe will love? I mean, Hamilton is not like anything else and it's an enormous success. So it can be done. It's so important. But it's so hard in between. So many of my friends, this holiday season is big for theater that is like a holiday show. Let's do a holiday review. Let's have a children's show. Let's do the Polar
rely on this season to make half their money for this season.
Yep, half their budget comes from this season.
But it sort of breaks my heart sometimes when I see all of my very talented actor friends held hostage in these productions of singing elves on a happy train, which is personal preference. There's nothing wrong with singing about.
A cousin of mine plays a Who every year. She plays a Who in the Grinch.
There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think less of any actors because they have to act. They must. But I hate that bullshit. I just want real art all the time, guys.
Although I've heard arguments and I can sympathize with arguments against that too, of sometimes, theater is there to distract as much as it is to enlighten.
Sure. And it makes people really happy.
I get what people say when they see that. Because of that, but at the same time, as a theater goer, not as someone who works in theater, this is a completely different side of me. As someone, my favorite theater is really dark, really gritty theater because I the emotion I get from that I can't experience anywhere else because of the intimacy of theater and the uncomfortableness I feel doing that as opposed to watching that same thing in a scenario in a movie. I'm not going to feel the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I can see that, yeah.
And I certainly don't think we should stop doing Christmas theater. Oh my God, go have your traditions,
fun.
Be happy
Everyone
and have fun.
Like a Christmas Carol, and
but it's not why I do
Capital
theater.
Repertory Theater.
I am coming to see it.
She is.
What?
I am December 10th.
Okay.
or the
I'll try.
11th. I forget. It's that weekend.
Yes.
I'll see what I can do.
Sunday, December
Hey,
10th.
yeah, Tony, come. We can
I'll
meet in
try.
person.
It'll be fun. Get beers.
Hey, yes.
We'll know Santa.
Hell yes.
But
yeah, I have nothing against that. It's just like it's not why I do theater.
Mhm.
And of course, I always face that challenge of trying to get people to see something that's not already successful, and the importance of new works and how on earth we can get people to start seeing them. I mean, there might be a link. Maybe you get them to buy a subscription because you're doing The Music Man, and then maybe also in that season is like a new work. And I like The Music Man fine. Actually, I think The Music Man teaches a very important lesson, which is your children are going to be great on stage no matter how badly they suck. Which I tell my brother all the time as he does middle school musicals. Like, they're very concerned about how good they are. But, you know what I mean.
It's the think system.
Exactly.
Think system
It's
works.
amazing that worked as well as it did.
The problem with the theater audience, as opposed to the video game audience, very different audiences. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be some overlap, which is why we do this show. There's overlap.
We are the overlap.
The majority of video game players are millennials, who
That phrase.
have like
Sorry, I hate
yes,
that term.
but unfortunately it's true, and who have like a limited income,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but have the internet as well to voice their opinions, and that's how and there's that. The majority of theater goers in this country are like 60 plus
Elderly
retirees
people.
who have disposable income.
Hmm. And who think of theater as, like a review or like an old-timey show. All the old people I talk to, when I get feedback on my musicals even, and I don't mean like old people, but the older generation is looking for like a schmaltzier kind of like a songier kind of musical. That's what they're used to, and that's what they sort of want. Yeah. And our generation is pushing towards newer forms.
We're trying to
Which
create
is
new things.
good.
And we're trying to change the aspect of theater into a way
Exactly.
that works for our generation.
Exactly. And the trick of it is, our generation is not all super into theater, and it can be too expensive, or it can be too, people don't even understand, like what it is sometimes. And it's tricky because I believe very much in a lot of works that don't get very seen at all, that you feel like need to be seen. But there's a way. I mean, look at Indecent, which is a great play that's on PBS now, so you can all watch it. Highly recommend that you do. Literally broke my mind. And the producers of that show let it run a couple weeks longer, even though it wasn't making money anymore, because they felt that it needed to be seen. And whenever people step up and make a choice like that, it fills me with holiday hope and cheer. Which you can knock right out of you by watching Indecent. Highly recommended. Great, devastating play.
Oy.
So good. Loved it. Cried for 2 hours after I saw it.
Wow. I did not know it was on PBS. That's awesome.
Yeah, just recently, I think last week.
That's so
The
cool.
theater industry is trying its hardest to keep up with an audience that doesn't go see theater as much.
Mm.
It's expensive. We get that
Yeah.
because there's a lot of money that needs to go into it in order to produce it.
The fact that I consider it to be like a birthday or a holiday gift will say something. It's like, I'm going to drop a decent amount of money for this one night's expenditure. That's not obviously theaters that I work for, because that's whole comp system. That's why comp tickets are part of the negotiation process in contracts.
Mm-hmm.
It's how many comp tickets do you get, because that's a decent chunk of income that the theater's not going to get anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, there are shows that need to be seen, and there are audiences that need to see certain shows.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite example is a couple years ago we did a show called It Should Have Been You, which should have been titled It Should Have Been Off Broadway. But it was fine. It was a fine show. It's a fun show.
Do you mean it should have been off Broadway? Like it should have been taken to off Broadway? Or do you mean it shouldn't have been on Broadway?
It should have been taken to off Broadway, it went to Broadway.
And it shouldn't have been.
It should have done.
Okay, wasn't sure.
It's the same kind of as it had the same kind of feel, not at all story wise, but had the same kind of feel as like an Avenue Q, where it was on Broadway for a little bit. If it went off Broadway, it would have ran forever. Well, Avenue Q still is, but right? Avenue Q still going, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it
Off-Broadway,
is.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, I thought so. But it's the same thing. But then Tyne Daly was on it. So once Tyne Daly signed on, they started adding more people. I know Sarah Borges was in it, the original one, or however you say her name. Pardon.
Yeah, Marcus, yeah.
But it was very fun. But the whole thing is spoilers. Mute for the next 5 seconds if you don't want any spoilers about it. The whole thing is it's about a wedding, and right after the wedding, it's revealed that the bride and groom are actually gay and are in relationships with the maid of honor and the best man.
Ooh, I like it.
So I'm
interested.
It's very fun. But I did this in rural Pennsylvania, and people would leave. It's not supposed to have an intermission, but it can right at that point, right after the wedding, and then it runs on from there. But right at intermission, people would leave and would be screaming at the administrative staff who went up there and introduced the show, saying, "What are you doing? How could you support this? Blah 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 blah."
And theater, they clearly don't know the theater community.
Clearly, but it was exactly what this particular audience needed. I personally fielded a phone call saying, "I can't support your theater if they support sodomy." And I was like, "Are you?" And I came so close to, and I was just trying to be as professional as I could. And I was like, "Okay," and I gave him, just consistently said, "Okay, goodbye." That's it. And I would have said something along the lines of, "Yeah, well, we don't need you," but we do, and that was my instinct.
But unfortunately, that man should never go see another piece of theater ever again in his life because
promote sodomy. Just, I mean, come on, who talks like that? But
people in rural Pennsylvania.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's true. But it was such a good show. But everybody who saw it, who had that correct mindset, loved it, and anyone who didn't have that mindset don't go to the theater anymore. And it's such a hard thing, but it's an important message for them to see, is seeing all these other people, and even not necessarily the show, seeing the rest of the audiences loving it and seeing, hey, your thoughts, your ideas, they're dumb. Your prejudices are no longer a thing in the mass community. So,
and that it's good for prejudiced people to be exposed to more stuff, and hope that one day
they'll get it.
It'll come through, and that's why we want them to come to see things. I mean, it's one of the hardest things when you write theater to change people, and you're performing it in a liberal bubble almost, and you feel like, well, should I take this to Texas? And then you're like, well, I don't want to go to Texas. They'll kill me in Texas. But aren't those the people that? And we're getting off topic, but I think it's a really important point that it's almost like you need people to see certain things, even when it's hard and even when it's dangerous and scary. But that's sort of the activist level of the kind of theater that we do.
The Purple Rose, who I worked at for a year and a half, the show that they're doing, starting in January, I believe, it's the next show, is a new work by Jeff Daniels himself, entitled Flint.
Oh.
And it's about the Flint, Michigan water crisis.
Is it? What?
And
the fact that they still don't have clean water.
And I'm sure it's going to anger a lot of people.
And they should.
But it's also a thing that probably really needs to be seen, especially in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be interested to. I've not read it. I'm really interested. If I get a chance, I'd love to see it, or at least read it. I'd be really interested to see how it performs in the box office, because they're taking a risk with this, I'm sure. I mean, the fact that it's written by Jeff Daniels is obviously going to give it some oomph. But at the same time, it's going to be a politically charged piece of theater, probably. And
I hope so. I hope it's really politically charged.
Yeah. How could it not be?
Yeah, it's gonna be.
I don't want jazz hands and tap numbers. I want hard hitting. You suck. Help us. Is what I want from that. That sounds so good. Let's go to Michigan.
Yeah, field trip.
Field trip to Michigan.
Woo.
We could talk forever about this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's a conversation I've had a lot. And how do we get these audiences in the seats and do things that are worthwhile doing? So it's very hard.
I'd like to tell a story that happened during Sex with Strangers performance.
Which is the title of a play.
It's the title of a play.
We worked on before She Loves Me. But we were doing our intermission shift where the set goes from a log cabin in upstate Michigan to an apartment in downtown Chicago. It's a big intermission shift, and it's a big change, scene change, and stuff like that. And I think you need to know about Capitol Repertory Theater is that we're a small thrust theater, so we have seating on 3 sides of the stage. It's kind of like what you'd see on like a runway or something like that. So there's seating around that. Our stage manager comes out to supervise the set change. She pretty much stands there, watches it, makes sure that everything's moving smoothly and that we're going on time, that kind of thing. Some people who were sitting in the front row on one of the side sections, they got my stage manager's attention. It's like, excuse me, could you please move that set piece? It's blocking my view. And this was like the people in the front row. They're like, unfortunately not. I mean, we have to. It's a set piece that we need to put in this specific location because we have everything designed around it. Like, well, I don't understand why you can't move it. I mean, it's blocking my view. Like, I just told you.
Do they think the actors improvise the things
we rehearsed
they do?
This specific thing, and she tried to be cordial at first. But they kept pressing this issue. Like, I'm very upset right now. I mean, I can't see that well. I'm missing half the show. I'm like, well, unfortunately, like, not all the angles are going to be great. We do our best to make sure that everyone can see like majority of the things.
We're trying, but yeah.
But and then I got so pissed, and then she was like, I'm sorry, I have to go and do this thing, but I can't fix your situation. I'm sorry. You'll have to talk with our box office. You're upset, and she like left it, and we were like. So yes, there are some people who have like you. No matter what you do, no matter how many times you try and please them, you can't because they expect. That's a problem I especially have with a theater audience, and I love like theater goers who appreciate the arts and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times you'll see people who in the audience like, how dare you? I'm paying good money to be here. Mm-hmm. I expect like. Above and beyond service and treatment. And
or just things that are impossible. I usher at Roundabout, as you all know. And we just had somebody who came in late, right? And so we have to late seat them, and we can't get them to their seats, their actual seats, if they're like in the front, because actors use all the aisles, and it's dangerous, and it could interrupt the show. So we tried to seat her in the back, and we had like 4 rows open in the back. It could have been like center back, center right, anything you want, and it's all close. You have a great view. But she was like, "No, I want to go to my seat. I want to go to my seat. I paid money for my seat," and we're just like, "We can't get you there. Actors use the aisles." And then an actor comes in from the back and goes down the aisle, and she's like, "Well, you just let that woman go wherever she wants." And we were like, that is an actor. That is what we are trying to explain to you.
You don't get it. That's the thing that I said was going to happen.
I mean, it was horrible, but it was really
being
funny.
A house manager really sucks. Being an usher and house manager.
Yeah, she went back out into the lobby and she yelled at the lobby usher. She was like, "Why didn't you tell me that I would be sat in the back? Like, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone." I thought that was a funny line that somebody said. We were like, "We feel like we're in the Twilight Zone talking to you. Why don't you just sit down and watch the show?"
You still get to see.
So you paid good money for these tickets that you're missing the show for. One, you should have been on time. I've had this problem too when I house managed a show in Michigan. Like this, I had this couple came in late after intermission, and I tried to late seat them, and they're like, "No, I want to go back to my seat," which was literally 2 rows in front of where I was putting them. Literally 2 rows, and they're like, "I want to go back to my seat." I'm like, "I can't do that because you were late, and we told you specifically at the house speech that you would be late seated." And I'm like, "I don't remember that." I'm like, "Well, then you shouldn't have listened." That's not what I said because I have to be cordial, but
we all just smile and nod.
It was a guy with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend was just like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you arguing? I hate you so much right now."
I hope they broke up.
She came up after the show and apologized to me. It's like, "I hope you break up with him."
Well, some audience members are so sweet too. There was one guy who asked me like, "I don't know if this is possible, but like, could you seat me like further back from my original seat? Because like, I don't like to be too close. Like my eyes are weird." And I was like, "Yeah, I could seat you further back. Just like wait until 5 minutes before curtain and you can pick like any seat you want back here." And then I did seat him 5 minutes before curtain. And then he came up to me again and he was like, "Listen, I just wanted to say like, thank you. Like, I didn't want you to think that was not appreciated." I was like, "This is such a small deal. Why are you being so nice?" He's like, "Thank you." sat down and I was like, okay, this is not a problem.
But I'm sure we all have like,
stories.
We all have stories about the audience members, and it's something that we have to live with. Unfortunately,
you need them. You love them most of the time, and you hate
Sometimes
them a lot of the time too.
We're talking people.
I want, like, we're about a half hour at this point, but I want to leave with a fun message for any people who are theater goers here and don't work in theater. Just know, people backstage talk just as much shit about you as you guys are talking about us.
If not more.
If not more.
We will grade you on the end of the night, like, this was a shitty audience tonight. Yeah, yeah, it was.
Also, if it's a famous musical, don't sing along.
Yeah, why do people do that? Where do they think they are?
What? Even community theater, I'll argue that. Don't.
Didn't they pay to see actors do it? Like,
Exactly.
go sing the soundtrack at home?
I will say, jukebox musicals, maybe there's some leeway there. They're designed for that specifically.
You're at the theater.
If there's no, unless the audience says, "Come on, you know the words."
Yeah,
I'm sorry, the actors. So come on, sing along.
Then
No.
that's fine. Then you.
Otherwise, it's not a concert. It's at the end of the day, it's not a concert. So even if it is a Janis Joplin musical, you're gonna know those songs. I don't know why Janis Joplin came immediately to mind, but you know
doing it McCarter.
that by but maybe, but still, don't do that. Don't sing along. It's just
also,
it's
like,
poor form.
I totally agree with you, Tony, 200%. And also, my piece of advice, if we're all doing one, is that just be nice to people who work at the theater. Because if you're nice to me, I'll want to help you. Like, if I can do it, I will. Like, we'll find a way to get you to your seat or whatever. But if you're like a bitch to me, if you're like a total jerk, I don't want to help you. I want you to sit in the back, and I don't give a shit. Kindness, like, grows and spreads. And there's no reason to be rude to anyone. We're all people, whether we're working as ushers or actors or stage managers, or if you're seeing a show, there's no reason for anyone to be rude to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And turn off your cell phones, or Patty LuPone will haunt you forever.
Don't freaking plug your cell phones into the set.
We have stories. We have lots of stories, but we need to cut it off now.
We do.
And
We should
in
have-
terms of pleasing our audience,
Yes.
thank you so much for watching and listening. We love you so much.
We don't talk shit about you. We promise.
Never, because you don't exist. Because no one watches.
Sometimes I watch these, so you're
I watch
welcome.
them when I edit them.
It's good to appreciate yourself sometimes.
Sometimes. Just every once in a while. Not a lot.
Wow.
So, thank you again. We'll try and be back next week, and we're trying hard to schedule the special episode that we're planning between Jesse and Tony's
Lee,
friend.
the game comes out on Wednesday, so I will probably use.
Yeah, I'll put
that
the link
afterwards.
to the game, the Steam link in the description of the video, as long as Tony sent it to me. Then, yeah.
If you stay long enough to listen to this, it's a lot of fun. It's very retro. It has a very Mega Man kind of feel to it. It's a lot of fun. So I recommend it a lot. It's got just enough story to keep you going. So
Ooh, I just got a Steam account, so I'm gonna play it.
there you go. It's only $10. It's really very good.
I have $10.
There you go. Cool. You can find $10. So great. Thank you,
Thank you for
everybody.
listening. Bye.
Bye.